Okay, can you guys hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Aaron, can you hear me?
Anna, yeah, I can hear you. Can you hear me? Anna, what type of file format do you guys have?
So one of them was doing by hand, but also she was writing some stuff in a docs, I believe. And Gia didn't tell me what she was using. Can you? Okay, they can email. All right.
Yeah, you can email it, and I can add it to the slides, or for everyone who's back who had a prototype, you can add it to, I'm gonna paste a Google Slides link into the, oh, what's this? No, Google Slides link to share prototypes. So I'll put the link in the chat and you can, upload a photo. You'll see what I did. I put something on slide 9. So you take a photo, you can, whatever you want to do, add some notes there, up to you. But if you have trouble adding to the slides, just message us in the chat and we can help you out. If you want to email it to me, that's fine too.
Okay.
I just get started tomorrow. Great work on your prototypes, everyone. Let's discuss some of the outcomes that each group created. We'll do this for about 20 minutes. Let's get some volunteers from the groups to start things off. We'll cover as many groups and outcomes as we can as time allows. Are there any volunteers to go first?
It's sort of fresh on my mind. I don't mind going first for our group.
Go ahead, Aaron.
Okay. Also, Sam, Francisca, Ali, Zainab, jump in if I miss anything. Share screen. Okay, there we go. Sorry, when? Oh, here it is. So yeah, we spent a lot of time discussing, kind of recapping what we did in activity 1, but we also talked about the limitations of ICTs in facilitating informal conversations. So like, I think we've discussed the water cooler effect, but office coffee pot, that kind of thing. So like the idle chit chat you have just from seeing someone in the hallway. And then we also kind of then transitioned into talking about this workshop because it is hybrid. There are challenges, there's audio issues, there's things that happen because they're hybrid. So the basis of our conversation was this platform GatherTown, which I think was used at last year's CogSci conference. Francisco was there, she mentioned that. Yeah, and what we discussed was it's like a social virtual platform where you are in the same space via an avatar and are able to like move around, join conversations, and are able to engage in this informal effect if wanted. I think it's often used for like cocktail hours at conferences or social gatherings for workplaces. So that's the basis of our drawing here. So like what we sort of quickly mocked up was like, if this workshop used something like GatherTown, imagine if like you had different groups. So instead of breakout rooms, the person in the middle is able to sort of just like actively choose which group they want to join. Like it's hard when you're sort of like just assigned to some sort of breakout room without deciding. It basically, we also talked a lot about agency. So, not being able to choose which group you join. And another thing we talked about was, there's this sort of pressure of, should I turn my video on or off in current settings like Zoom? So we talked about proximity-based video on. So it makes it feel more like real life. So if this person say decided to join group 1, the video sort of popping up when you get close to another person was a way, if we go back to the model I discussed, is a way to provide those spatial and topological cues that things like body language gesture, but once you walk away, there's no pressure to keep your video on. And I think someone did bring up like, facilitators really are pressured to sort of keep their video on throughout, but it's not always the case that is needed. We also talked about something like I don't know if this exists in like GatherTown or Mozilla Hubs, but we talked about file sharing. So right now there's this combination of sort of like diagrammatic and sentential in these platforms. So like if you put a link into Mozilla Hubs, it appears as like it just says link kind of thing. But what would it be like if, just curious to see the effects of what it would be like if you shared a file and there was like a physical file in this virtual space versus this described link. I think that's kind of the gist of what we described. Did I miss anything from anyone in our group?
I think we also talked about like spatially as you are approaching someone, then your video will be on. But if like you are also in a situation like GatherTown, you're in control of who gets to see you. So for example, if you're close to the group, then people will be looking at you. But then if you're far away, it's basically like your video's off. So it would be good to have this kind of feature that's like people can see you based off of the spatial location.
Yeah. And also, this is not a direct point of this activity, but sort of like a secondary thing I noticed was like we only had half an hour, and it did take us some time to like figure out which platform to use. Like we tried Zoom Whiteboard, and for whatever reason I couldn't access it, and it's hard to draw. Zainab was better at drawing than others, like just because of like the specificity of her mouse creating like more fine lines or something like that. But yeah, we really like had to work as a group to figure out a platform, and I just sort of started doing this on my own while they were using Zoom Whiteboard, and we ended up with this. So I think there's a lot of like storming involved in figuring out which platform to use in the hybrid environment. That's all.
Thanks, Erin. Anyone else? Oh, Mariana's going to go. Okay.
Oh, yeah, sure. Alrighty. Okay. Well, first of all, thank you guys for a wonderful conversation. We talked about a lot of interesting things, including like the metaverse as an ICT, the concept of privacy within that, being constantly recorded as a ways to gather information regardless of spatial topological features within the ICT. But one of the main solutions we came up with regarding, for example, Teams was a difference in status. So as it stands in Teams, you either get status offline, unknown, or, available. But we saw one of the problems within ICTs as technological issues, as we so often have. And, kind of like the social rule of dropping out of a call is kind of rude, but when it's out of your control and it's due to technological difficulties, it would be nice to have a status that you're offline, not because you're specifically unavailable or don't want to talk, but rather because you can't. And also a different status for, kind of more of a being aware of the group's access to technology. So for example, stating that there's strong Wi-Fi for all, as opposed to like informing only yourself if you have a strong connection or not. And then that way you can kind of know if everyone has access to the information. And another problem we gathered that kind of stemmed from this conversation regarding privacy was the issue of being recorded. And, one of the participants brought up that there were meetings that would last for up to 8 hours or conferences that would last for up to 8 hours. and she would refrain from speaking and turning off on her camera because of privacy reasons. Like, you don't know exactly what they're going to do with those recordings. You know, what if a bad question is asked, something along those lines. So what if you could, when you're being informed that you're being recorded, you could maybe check off a box that says, I consent to my audio and video being recorded. And in case you don't consent to this, then within the recording that, you know, can be viewed after the meeting, your video and audio is excluded. You know, it's not such a difficult feature to implement, and it would greatly, you know, help even people with neurodivergence that are worried about watching themselves over a camera. And yes, thank you.
Does anyone want to go next, or should our group go? Okay, I'll take that as our group will go next. So we talked a lot about spatial properties and perspective in our group. The main comparison being the boxes of Zoom versus something called, what was it called? GatherTown, which provided like a top-down view of a space in which you could see people's avatars, and as you got closer to them, your video would come on and the audio would get louder. And so this picture on the left is a representation of that, and you can only see people in the room you're in, but it's a lot of information overload because you're getting a view of everyone's labels versus compared to a first person point of view, which are the two images on the right. The orange things are supposed to be your feet, just FYI, going into a space where you have more distance in your vision. There's a difference between your peripheral vision and what's in focus. And all of those features help to reduce some of the information and cognitive overload that you might face. Along with that, we have a hunch that it may also help people interact without as much social anxiety because you're less informed about less conscious about what you look like and more focused on the interaction itself. Are there any points that my group wants to add that I may have missed out on? Okay, we're good to go. Does someone want to share next? I can move to this slide.
We can share. I don't know what order we're going in, but at some point we do have stuff to share, but I don't know what order.
Okay, this is your group, right, Peter? Data stream?
Yeah, so this, so I'm actually impressed people got so much co-designing done because we did get something done. So, and Logan weigh in where I leave stuff out. So we started by trying to sort of revisit the pain points, and he talked about equity and fairness in the workplace, and for their constituents. Remember, Logan works at an educational software company, okay, and also like attention and Zoom fatigue, like a kid's attention and Zoom fatigue. Like, are the kids actually paying attention? So on and so forth. But then we shifted gears to the actual software. And so this is a screen capture from some of the software Logan works on, okay? And so it's multimedia, so it's audio and these diagrams going together. And so we talked about like ways that one could do, like, for example, this node link. So there's a node link diagram with like the relations among these labeled objects with these lines, okay, and then this is like about like how concepts relate to each other. Like we got like lobsters, crayfish, decapods, and shrimp, and in some relation. And so we talked a little bit about we weren't able to get into much code design, and I don't know if you're sharing my screen, we went into Mozilla Hubs, but I think Logan was having some navigation issue. I wanted to sort of, for him to experience like spatial audio and like how that could be used to make a sort of audio diagram. And then if we'd had more time, I think we would have brainstormed a bit, like could an environment like this deal with attention in Zoom? Because subjectively, when we've used something like this, it somehow seems to help with Zoom fatigue, like hearing people from different directions helps. Logan, maybe you can weigh in a bit. We weren't able to get into much co-design, but maybe elaborate and maybe look back to anything I talked about that you would add.
So the two things that kind of popped into my mind as you were talking, one just some research I was reading recently about the effects of joint attention, and yeah. So one of the big things that I was hearing from teachers was just like it was really hard to keep kids focused on a screen, especially younger kids. They're not used to focusing on a screen for hours at a time, and it's really hard for them to do that when they're sitting home alone. Which meant that parents were often having to sit with their kids and not work so that the kids could stay focused. But especially little kids, they're losing out on these what's normally a group activity of sitting and focusing on the teacher or focusing on a storybook or focusing on a group project, and using that co-reference of if these two are looking at it, it must be interesting. And this research I was reading recently was, looking at college students, and even at that level, like having an accomplice in the room who's paying close attention to what the lecture's saying made a big difference in the learning of the experimental subject. Even when the accomplice was sitting behind the person. So it didn't even have to be a visual cue in that case. Or like they're picking up on these social cues of like, oh, this person's paying attention, that must be interesting, and it's helping them process that information and learn better. So I thought I'd mention that, and then I'll just leave it at that.
Yeah, no, I think actually I think that's a great insight. I think I've had the experience where like someone else is working intently at work or the coffee shop, and it helps me focus, right? Okay. So I think, this is, I think, uncharted territory. I mean, one of the things we thought about with something like the Mozilla Hub, like the online virtual environment, is, and some of our colleagues at Ontario Tech are doing some related stuff. It's like, could there be face tracking so that the avatar actually, because like a lot of what's going on in education, it's like, I see you looking at the map too. And I see the way you're looking at the map and the way you're pointing, like all this stuff, okay? And so when you talk about these pain points of like, what's the kid looking at? Like, this is the thing, right? It's like I see you see me, I see you see the thing that someone made, and I see how you're looking at the thing and what part of the thing you're looking at. And so all these feedback loops, like that vertical axis on the cube model, okay, which we think is sort of the feedback loop, in combination with like the spatial cues of where, like eyeballs are optimizing, not necessarily to see, but also to see for other people to see what other people are seeing. Like we have a remarkable ability to know exactly where those two tiny spheres 20 feet away, are they looking at me or someone else? That's like incredible, right? And so I think that that's definitely something missing that sort of you're talking about, Let's add Logan to any of that?
No.
Okay. Okay, all right, thanks.
Thanks, Peter and Logan. I believe we have one more group. We're going to go till 3:55.
I think that's it.
How do I? Oh, we're screen sharing, right? We got to
Yeah.
stop.
Do we have another group? I think Zainab joined.
Should I stop?
Yeah.
Stopping. Okay.
Sorry, just to clarify, is there a group online that has not presented yet?
So my
I-
group was very
Slide
small.
cover.
And one of the participants, she is not in the call right now. And the other participant, she asked me to send her prototype a little bit later. She said she wants to
Okay.
work on it.
No
Okay.
worries. Perfect. Then we'll go into the break, please.
Then you can report back on what was discovered, right? You know,
Sorry?
but Annie could still report back on what they came up with, right? Verbally.
Oh, sorry. So Trinidad, do you want to talk about your ideas? She was trying to think something to help with dance classes remotely. And then she was discussing a little bit about the idea of what it would be a prototype. And I tried to encourage her to not think only on strict to like a screen, but like trying to think of a physical space and what she could do, because her idea was more having like different objects involved in the learning space, specifically for dance. And then I encouraged her to see ways that she could work with collaboration, like having multiple people sharing the learning experience. But then I didn't get to have her an update on her prototype until we came to the breakout room. So that's what I was expecting. Do you want to share a little bit if you feel comfortable, Trinidad?
Hi everyone. Yeah, I'm not very sure about my idea. Like I wasn't thinking about the physical prototype. I was just like brainstorming a more idea in general. But yeah, my idea came to my mind because I remember myself in the strict quarantine period that I was taking dance lessons via Zoom sessions. And it was really strange because we were in our rooms and we didn't have enough physical space to like it's a dance classroom. And our teacher was teaching us from Zoom, and sometimes the music was in another tune or in a volume that it was not clear. And we didn't have mirrors or lights, or the sound machinery in some way wasn't what we were used to. So I thought like some kind of toolkit to send to your students, maybe for a few students, because I think that it's going to be a little bit expensive and difficult to send to everyone. But I don't know, like a toolkit with lights or mirrors or some kinds of instruments that will work with a dance class session and online. It is not the best idea and best option because it is difficult, I know, but I don't know, I think that because it would be interesting for people that it is abroad and wouldn't want to keep their dance lessons with the people that they know, something like that. It is not very clear to me in this moment. So that is all. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Anna, and thanks, Trinidad, for sharing. Okay, we'll be wrapping up this activity and heading for a 10-minute break. And then when we come back, we'll have a demonstration by Robert and Gino. If you feel you still have something to share or we're unable to contribute at this time, you can add to our Google slide board or email any of us later on. We do really want to hear from everyone. So thank you very much, and we'll reconvene at 4:05.